What's up, Charles? Some reason I can't hear you, but that could be me.
There you go.
How am I coming in?
Good. How am I? Did I actually get the technology right and stuff?
Yeah, man. I think it sounds good. Hopefully, you can hear me. We'll kick it off, man. Good to see you. I'm at home today working, so I had to put a 2x8 Southern Yellow Pine treated board behind me here.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully, my deck won't miss it. All right, Jory can hear us, so we'll kick it off here. So Charles De La Torre, Industrial Forest Products, Ashley Buckle Materials Exchange. We are the only digital B2B exchange providing transparency and the ability of buyers and sellers to buy and sell OSB plywood and lumber direct on the first digital exchange. So Charles, great day today. We had a good conversation. We both joined Twitter, man.
We
I
did.
mean, it's not like I think we're a little behind the curve on that one, but
a little bit. We're probably years behind it.
Yeah, I think I actually had a few accounts, but never remembered the password. So cool, we're on there, and hopefully we're putting that out to people right now, and streaming that. We'll get better as we go along. So I know my handle is 2x4, and then the name 7. So at 2x47. How about what's yours, Charles? If people want to
IFPCD.
IFPCD, man, that's an easy
real
one.
Original.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, so let's kind of kick into it. It was a short week last week with going into Good Friday and Easter. It seems like we had a bunch of our shows last week talked about stuff. There was this talk about this impending buy that was coming, and I don't know whether I'm a believer or non-believer in it. No, all of the things going on in our little environment, our national environment, and our global environment going on. Those are knowns, right? We know there's
but are they though? I mean, I think you and I discussed the Russian-Ukraine debacle. And what are we reading? Is that all of it true? Is it not? Are the Ukrainians really on top? I mean, they impact and influence a lot of commodities. So, I mean, who's really in control here?
Well, I know one thing. Lumber seemed to be one of the quick things out of the gate a few years ago, has continued. And now it seems all the other commodities have joined and are joining in this. I saw the race. Somebody on Twitter had the race between corn and natural gas today. and it was like at $8 a bushel and $8 for natural gas. So it's crazy. So let's go back and kind of unpack what we know what's going on. We got housing starts coming out tomorrow. From what I hear in the field, coming from the field, at least this month or last month starts and permits should be decent, right? From what we see. I don't know because, I don't have the report, obviously, but they should be decent. We still know that we can only build 1.2 to 1.3 million homes right now. We know multifamily is going well. We know there's still a propensity for people to want to buy houses. And we know the Federal Reserve is doing what they can to kind of temper things through their conversations and through talking about raising rates. It seems like some of the rates are starting to creep up. Mortgage rates are up, but people are still buying houses. So I can see foot traffic was a little bit less, but still one of the best ones, even better than 2004, 2005, people visiting homes to buy, right? And then we go to your question on the Ukraine. So I don't know the exact numbers. I know a few people have told us, but there is a fair amount of lumber comes out of Russian areas surrounding it. But I think your question, what we talked about this morning is, what does that mean? Where's that fiber going to come from? How is it going to get to the places that were displaced by that fiber? And what does that mean in the overall world and the overall scheme of things?
Well, I mean, like I mentioned, as far as a percentage, I think it's somewhere around 9 to 12% that Europeans import from Russia. So, I mean, once again, to touch on that, the fiber's got to come from somewhere. And allocations for ships that are already inbound or already loading or will load within the next couple of weeks have already been made months ago. So May is going to be a real trying time or understanding or an abrupt halt as far as what's the true diminished volume. But until then, I don't think we're real sure what that looks like.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think for what you and I talked about, the fiber coming from there seems to be a lot of boards, a lot of finished plywoods, birch, so forth. But that fiber still has to come from somewhere, right?
Yep.
So that's another one to be determined. Let's talk about a little bit what happened the last few weeks. Seems to be a tale of two different species. So pine went from from a trading high around where's 4-inch east side? Where did that peak at about 3 weeks ago?
$1,500. I mean, cash market was 1,500. Random, I mean, was obviously short of that, but
yeah, think of that. $1,500. 6-inch was not far behind that, right?
no, it was $300-$400 discount.
$300-$400. Okay, so $1,100-$1,200. Now I'm seeing things listed on the exchange, as low as 2x6 16s, and they probably traded lower the 600 area, right? And 2x4s are starting to show up. And the other thing that's interesting was going back and forth with one of the guys. His name's 2x4caster. Great freaking handle on Twitter, man. And I was asking him about, if he was talking today about how do-it-yourself is starting to slow down, right? So if Southern pine is 50% roughly of, goes to treaters, if 50% of Southern pine goes to treaters, and do-it-yourself jobs are slowing somewhat, still good, but slowing somewhat, what is that going to do to pine? We've already seen pine take a pretty good pullback. But then how is that going to affect the other species? Because when I look at 2x6 and 2x4 and spruce, you're still seeing numbers that are, pretty high level, right?
Very much so.
And I'm wondering why that is, right? It's last week, some mills, especially in the East, were saying they're selling a bunch of stuff from the same mills that sell the same product. Different mills that sell the same product were saying that they weren't selling anything, right? So
Yep.
Very, very crazy time. What do you read into that? First of all, you live in that pine world so much. Not that you don't live in the spruce world, but you're pretty tied into that. What are you seeing going on in your region?
Well, 2x6 and 2x8s finally found a bottom, but I mean, between those two widths, I mean, it was a race to the floor, right? Who could get rid of it faster, and how much do you want? And there were some pretty heavy discounts that were floated around on big volumes, and a lot of that went to, as you mentioned, multifamily. Not a large majority of it went to retail distribution or retail selling organizations. So, it not only is it a tale of two species, it's a tale of two different economies. So you've got multifamily, who is a larger consumer historically on individual project basis than single family. So you've got a position to where your distribution into the single family industry, and what happened last year, they are running extremely lean and being very, very cautious on what they stick on the ground, because these $300 pullbacks a week or bi-weekly, you can lose a small fortune very, very fast. Because once again, now everybody's paying attention to lumber futures and everybody's in the finance business. It turns into, well, futures have changed, futures have dropped, we're down $600 or whatever that number is, and you're getting a bunch of pushback from your end user. And you're having to ship things a lot faster, and that makes things very, very difficult with transportation bottlenecks as well as labor bottlenecks.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And we've talked this on a few shows, and I think you correctly pointed out last week. I made the comment that freight was easing up, and you're like, well, yeah, but where, right? And like, well, there are certain pockets that we were paying, let's say from Buffalo, New York to Utah, that have dropped from $10,000 to $6,000, right? But then you get normal lanes like out of the south going back up north. They're still tough, right?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, so
very much so.
The whole
and Florida's still over $350 a mile, depending on where you're going.
Why is that in Florida? What's the reason that in Florida?
I couldn't tell you. Okay. I wish I knew, because I mean the variables are still the same, and the volumes that are coming into ports, whether it's Tampa, Cape, South Florida, or the Panhandle, they're relatively similar to where they have been historically. But I don't know, inflation is probably the best guess I can give you.
Let's talk about one of my favorite subjects. One thing that we've moved, over 500 trucks on our platform over the thousands we've moved. OSB and plywood, right? So OSB is a tale of two sellers, right?
Yes.
I'm going to get out of this Charles Dickens analogies here in a second, but that was the last book I looked at, so I figured I'd.
Works for me.
Everybody that's listing is selling contracts, and people are selling extra wood they had from people. So the market is efficiently finding the people that needed it versus the people that don't need it, that had too much. I'm sure home centers are adjusting pretty quickly because, they adjust to print. 7/16 took a pretty big hit on print last week. The thick panel stayed up there, but it doesn't seem like you hear the same thing from people that talk to the mills, like the mills aren't participating in this. Or maybe they are.
Not at all. They're not. They want no part of it.
Right. And
it's surprising.
And they may know something that we don't know, or they're just doing what they always do, right? Letting the market clear before they get in front of it. Because they're very intelligent and they have a lot of the statistics and things they look at flow. But I will say one thing we see on our exchange is the flows of the material kind of show how that market gets certain regions that they try to, I don't want to say protect, but there's certain regions that you can see when it's a free and open market, that market finds the regions where there's not enough wood, and when there's too much wood, it disappears pretty quickly, right? At a price. So are the mills going to come in and do anything as this sells off, or how are they going to dig their feet in on this one?
Well, I know some large regional producers here. I mean, they've just gotten off planned maintenance on their biggest mill. And then I know some other guys that are about to hop on it in 7 to 10 days. So, I mean, the question is, how does that affect it? I don't know. It depends on what the takeaway really is on your home center business and multifamily.
So what do you mean on the maintenance side of things, Charles?
Planned maintenance. They shut down for planned maintenance.
Okay. Planned or production? Planned or planned?
Planned. PLANNED. Planned.
Okay.
Sorry. Planned maintenance or preventative maintenance, whatever your terminology is. So that's one thing that they're doing to kind of keep the question up in the air as far as how far does it go down, or does it sustain itself? Because, I mean, coming off $400 in a week that's a widow maker for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I was a little, I was. As far as how far does it go down, or does it sustain itself? Because, I mean, coming off $400 for the week that's a widow maker. Right. A lot of people. Hold on one second here. There we go. Now can you hear me okay, Charles?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had two screens going here, and you were delayed on one of them. I was a little surprised with the way it came off on 7/16. I mean, that's one of the biggest moves down I've seen them catch in a while. Like you said, thicker panel stayed up. We had a lot of people, on the exchange get in front of it 3 or 4 weeks ago. So we almost saw this coming because we saw the level of bids and offers really move around. And on a digital exchange, when you have 100 people listing, buying, and selling in different locations, you can kind of see the global market bidding and asking, which if you're one trader sitting at one place and only can talk to one mill and talk to 7 customers, you don't see as much like that. So what are you seeing? One quick thing I wanted to do. I had dinner with my buddy Sean a couple weeks ago, and he gave me these, if you can see them, Ag Motion Titleist Pro V1s. So basically, he gave me the ability to go lose $6 or $7 in one swing.
You and 98% of the rest of us.
Yeah, which is like the equivalent of a $200, $300, or $400 move down in OSB. But Sean, thank you very much for that. They'll come in really handy. What are you seeing as far as, like I said, your value add and what you do down there? Buying spruce and adding value to it doesn't make as much sense as you have to be really heavy to pine right now, would be my guess, right?
No, we are. I mean,
Yeah.
we sold into May on pine studs, but I mean, spruce, we're extremely cautious. We're just trying to move inventory and keep eyes on trucks and make sure we don't hold a lot. So we're trying to be as swift as possible. But on Southern Yellow Pine, I mean, your values are definitely in your 2 to 6 and your 2 to 4 trim studs when you look at it on a species comparison basis. Still, obviously, because they don't have commas in them. It's not a 4-digit number. So that's good. And I mean, we're out to the second week of May now. But I mean, it's still one of those things where even your big consumers, it's a wait and see scenario. Unless you can give them a smoking deal and bring them value, and it's relatively quick, there's not very many people that are pulling the trigger.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So, where you sit right now, where's the Southern Yellow Pine deals at? Are they at the mill now, or those? It seems that those have shifted over to the secondary level, from what I see. Does that make
Very
sense?
much so. Very
And
much so.
What I mean by that is, when mills have something to take care of, especially in the South, they've got these big traders at these big companies that'll come in and buy 100 or buy 50, and sometimes the discounts to print blow your mind of what they're actually trading at. But they have to do that to move the inventory off because they don't have the customer base to move it, especially when the traders aren't buying, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. So, and they're rewarded. The secondaries are rewarded for taking the risk and the liquidity to do that. So, I love seeing that, right? You see a lot of that, but I just wanted to basically, I think one of the things to get across here is the values and the deals, in some cases, not all, have switched from the mills into the hands of speculators or resellers or secondaries that are going to hold that, take the risk, and then move it off. Now, I don't. It's Monday, so it's early. Do you think we'll see any follow through in pine? Because I'm not feeling it yet.
I don't think there's a lot of momentum upward. I mean, we're not. We bought some deals and we moved them off, and we did some things when the opportunity presented itself. But I mean, we're not buying anything that's not already sold or back to back.
On the flip side of that, I had a conversation with somebody last week about they were talking about wanting to take something short, right? I'm like, buddy, like if you were going to take something short, that should have been done 2 or 3 weeks ago, right?
Very much so, yeah.
Like my friend Greg Riley always says, a good short is covered in 24 to 48 hours, right?
Oh yeah.
So we're in that really strange part of the market right now, in that sticky wicket, as they do a cricket term, right? Where it's
the sticky wicket. I can honestly say I've never heard that before, but
yeah,
cricket,
I don't know what that means. Hopefully, it's not something bad, but I read that somewhere. But we're at that part of the market where people want something to happen, right? Because we've just been through the most volatility in 2 years, and I think some people went out and found the cheap item to buy as pine. One question I had for you is, how far north does pine start moving now with spruce and all these other items? There's people that say they would never use it up north, but then all of a sudden I see it in their yards, right? Or I see their
northern Indiana, northern Ohio, southern Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania, upstate New York. I mean, it's stretching quite a ways.
And it's not just trusses. It's people that are convincing their builders, if they want to supply stick frame builders, if they want to supply a fiber all the time, they need to get used to using it, right? And honestly, some of this fiber at these pine mills is beautiful now. The way they dress it and finish it, it's a darn nice product, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So what else we want to talk about today, Charles, before we get up against the half an hour here?
I don't know. I think you covered it all. I mean, I think, the biggest thing that I see is reading the room and not data, because sometimes data can be misleading. You look at futures today, it's up and you're in the mid 800s, and that seems like there's some sort of resistance below that at this point. But once again, it goes to, who's active in that market.
Well, like reading the room, and a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Things are never as bad or as good as they seem. I think we're still going to have one heck of a good takeout. I think that when we go on social media and look at everything going around the world, it makes us want to get under the cover and suck our thumbs, right? Because it's scary. It's a scary world out there, right? But the fact is, we've got a lot of momentum in this industry, and this industry is doing a good job. It's moving things. God knows if we can get above 1.3 homes under construction and stuff starts breaking loose, we may be off the races again. But when I look in my little ecosystem around me. I tell my wife every weekend we walk around like, "Can you believe what that house sold for, or that house sold for?" And you and I were talking about farmland today, right?
Yep.
Land was trading at $10,000 an acre in Iowa last year is trading at 15 or 18,000 in some cases right now. And people are moving to hard assets right now. And not right now, they have been. And a house is a hard asset. So I kind of have a little conundrum trying to figure out what the Fed is going to do. Are they trying to slow housing down? Can they? I don't even know if they can, because it has so much momentum and a tailwind behind it. It seems to really be moving. And even bad news, it may just trade sideways. But every time there's something good, it just back off to the races again.
No, everything you said is correct, and it's spot on. You know, the Fed is trying to do what they can because of the I guess obviously the inflation and the levels that have and the expediency that it's happened. But as far as housing goes, there's going to be that flock or that flight from your major metros into more affordable assets. And you know, you talk about you and your wife having a conversation about how much a house sold for in your major or your suburb of a major metro. Imagine somebody moving to the south and moving to a town with 25, 30,000 people in it, and they buy a 2,500 square foot house for $350,000, and they're used to seeing that for $500,000, $600,000. Yeah. So I mean, it's a totally different dynamic. It's a different buyer. You know, it's going to create a lot of interesting outflows of information, and it's up to us in the wholesale and the trade industry to kind of figure out what it really means.
Somebody I was reading on social media today said, "Good morning to everybody who sold their house for $800,000 in 2020, and now it's worth 1.5 million." It's crazy, right? But we're seeing that, and I don't know whether we're in the ninth inning of something or we're in the fifth inning right now, right? And I think it's hard to tell with $4 trillion plus sloshing around in the economy, in an experiment that's kind of unknown, and in a market with really quick information now that we've never had before, and a housing market that feels it's still pretty solid and has a lot of activity behind it. Maybe worst case is we just took the tips off of some stuff in the real volatility. But as Greg Riley said in our Wednesday call last week, he thinks there's still going to be 2 million houses built in this cycle. He just doesn't know if it's going to be next year or 2024, right? And I think I kind of agree with that.
I do too. Because I mean, once the volatility smooths itself out and these supply chain shortages or disruptions kind of work the kinks out, I mean, there's plenty of buyers.
Right. Well, look, everybody, Charles, thank you so much. You can get a hold of Charles. We'll throw his email up there, and you can get on Materials Exchange. There's Charles at C. De La Torre at ifpwood.com. If you want to get on Materials Exchange, the first digital B2B exchange for buying and selling lumber, you can come to mxlumber.com and press Get Started, and we'll get you registered. This week, we have a show every week. Tomorrow, it's Lumber from the Free Seats with Mike and Greg Kuda. Greg Riley, Matt Beamer, and I go Wednesday with lunch, or This Week in Lumber, lunch with Lumberman with Matt Lehman on Thursday at noon Central Time. And Friday, we top it off with our Friday Smart Market call with Mike Wisniewski and a different guest every time. So we're trying to bring transparency to the industry and stream live every day and add shows every day. And Charles, man, I appreciate everything you do for us, and hopefully we keep at it.
Yes, sir. We appreciate it as well.
All right, everybody. You have a great day.
You too, Ash.
Yep.